Virtualizing external business data. In this video you will learn how to integrate a Bisagi process with an external data source, configuring a Bisagi virtualization to retrieve information, storing it in the process data model, or to send information and store it in the external data source. To illustrate this, we will use the following example. A bank has a product request process that starts with the registration of the client's information. Then, in the complete request activity, the supplier of the products has to be selected. The bank already has a set of suppliers for this, and their information is stored in the ERP system. The process has to access this information to display it in the complete request activity. Bear in mind that a new supply can be registered or an existing one amended at any time. Therefore, if the process uses the virtualized information, it is retrieved immediately on demand, and if it is amended, it is sent immediately to the external database. To retrieve the supplier's information, we need to configure a Bisagi virtualization manually, using the standard method. So, we will go to the Modules view and select the Systems menu. Firstly, we need to create a new system to represent the real system which Bisagi will integrate. Therefore, select the New System option. A new window is opened, where we will enter the name of the system as ERP System, and select the option Enable Virtual Entities and Replication for this system. Now click on the OK button to create the ERP system. Within the ERP system, select Providers, and then select New Provider to define the metadata needed to establish the connection with the external database. A new window is opened. Here we have to enter a name for the data provider and the specific Bisagi functionality that we will use. Enter the name as SQL ERP and uncheck the option Enable Replication for this provider. Only the option Enable Virtual Entities for Provider has to be checked. Now select the Provider Entity and Library tab. Bisagi can establish connections with SQL Server databases or Oracle databases by default. Therefore, keep the configuration by default. If necessary, the logic can be changed to establish connections with other database servers, such as MySQL, DB2, and Postgres, etc. So click on the Provider Development Properties tab. Now click on the OLEDB Config button to configure the metadata of the database connection. Here we have to configure the information of the server and the database. In this case, the database is on the same server, but it can be on any server within the network. Bear in mind that Bisagi can connect by default to SQL Server or Oracle databases. If you need to connect to an Oracle database, just select Oracle and configure the metadata of the connection. The steps before and after are the same. Now click on the OK button to finish the creation of the data provider. Within the provider created, select the Virtual Entities option, left-click and select New Virtualization Class. Now select the default virtualization class created previously and right-click, selecting Add Entity to Virtualization. Now select the default virtualization class created previously and right-click, selecting Add Entity to Virtualization. A new window is opened in order to manually match the Bisagi entity to the external table and to configure the attribute used to identify each record as unique. Therefore, match the product provider entity with the supplier's table. Then select ID number as the business key. A cache time put can be configured to specify how many times the information will be validated in the process. When the time expires, information used in Bisagi will be synchronized. When the time is set to 0, it is synchronized every time that the information is used. Now click on the OK button to add the product type entity. Here, Bisagi presents the entity's current attributes together with those matching the external source in the adjacent column. Right-click on the product provider entity and select Add Attribute to Virtualization to map each attribute in the corresponding column of the external table. This has to be done to each attribute that we wish to synchronize with the external table. It is not necessary to virtualize all the attributes, only those that Bisagi requires for the process. To identify which are the attributes not virtualized, try to add a new attribute to the virtualization, and the entity attributes not virtualized will appear in the combo. In this case, we are not synchronizing the email attribute. This means that the values registered in the email of the suppliers will exist only for the product request process. This tutorial shows the configuration needed to integrate the process with an external data source by configuring the Bisagi virtualization. Thank you for your interest in Bisagi, the solution preferred by BPM specialists.